Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Hud, chapter 11, and we will cover verses 1 to 8. The Quran contains complete guidance for humanity. And these are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any query or question. Recap Surah Yunus. If you remember, we did not have meetings towards the end of Surah Yunus, and I had sent out the presentations. So I thought to recap some points, salient points, which we covered in Surah Yunus. The system of the universe is created to make it suitable for man to live in. Man possesses choice and intent and has a self, which contains certain latent potentials for which the universe has all that which can help to bring out these potentials. We covered it in a reasonable detail that whatever latent potentials we have, the universe is created in a way which includes other human beings and with whom we interact so that our potentials can come out. And that is the way Momineen should look at the Quran, that the Quran is there to help us to bring out our best during this finite physical life. Time is created by the alternation of the day and night, and passing time serves as a reminder to man that his physical life is finite on this planet. A lot has been written on time as well as in space and their mutual relationship. But the Quran has very directly told us that the alternation of the day and night, as we see it, is to really remind us about our finite presence on this planet. Because we being physical beings with cognitive abilities, we have limited time here and we got a lot to do to bring out those potentials. Man is provided with the guidance of Wahi, and it is then left to him to either choose it or reject it. The results of his choices and decisions will decide what kind of world he creates on the planet. Very important point for us, just as a reminder that the world which we see in 2023 as of today is the sum total of all what men or human beings have done in the past. The functioning of the law of requital, which is essentially cause and effect, is made known to him. Man is made aware of the issues in his life and invited to use his intellect and emotions within the guidance of Wahi. Accounts of previous nations are related to him in order to learn lessons from their rise and fall. Allah never does injustice to any human being, and if there are problems faced by man on the planet, then he should look for the causes in his own actions. Those who wish to strive on the path of Allah are provided with guidance in the Quran, and they will find full blueprint for the system of being outlined in the Quran. The models of Nuh and Musa are briefly explained to help Momineen learn the process and procedure of following the guidance in the Quran. The name of this surah, that is Hud, is probably taken from the mention of the messenger of Allah Hud in the verse 1150. Now let us go to the first verse of this presentation. The Quran's verses cover the essentials of Deen as it is from Allah, who is wise and omniscient. Alif Lam Ra Kitabun Uhkimat Ayatuhu Summa Fussilat Min Ladun Hakimin Khabir. It is a decree by Allah, Alim and Rahim, that this is that code of life whose laws have been established on a solid foundation, that is the permanent values, and have been expounded in such an eloquent and clear style, so that no kind of doubt or vagueness can remain in these. This is because this has been sent down from that Allah, who is also wise and also omniscient, who is aware of all matters of the universe and human requirements, and his every act is based on hikmat, that is wisdom, i.e. rational explain. So what this verse is telling us broadly, that Allah is the originator of knowledge, and this knowledge is placed at the disposal of man, and it is his job to benefit from this knowledge and then apply it. Verse 11:1 explaining meanings of Fussilat. Because this word has been used over here, I thought to explain it slightly in more detail. This is the root, the border between two things, that is demarcation line. Fussilat, normally people who have Urdu as a language, they think it means all details, whereas in Arabic, the word has slightly different connotation. It means to separate one thing from another so that the distinction becomes clear. And we know Quran is also called Furqan, which differentiates between haq and batil. To separate or to make something clear, to highlight. And some applications are noted here, and these are taken from Lughatul Quran. It is not correct to take the meaning that the Quran contains every detail. It means to elucidate and to clarify. The book in which everything is stated clearly and presented distinctly. It is a perspicuous book in which there is no confusion. And we also know Quran has said there is no contradiction in it. It has given principal laws which are immutable for all times. Further details of these principles, laws, and values are to be worked out by the Jamaat Momineen according to the needs of their era. And that is why Quran puts a lot of emphasis on improving our intellect, increasing the expanse of our horizon of our consciousness, so that we can understand the values and then work out what is to be done within the system of Deen. Suitable alterations will be made according to the changing environment. However, the Quranic principles will remain unaltered. Note that these permanent values point to their own immutability. And we can figure it out. We have gone through these aspects previously as well. Now, further reflections on this verse. The Quran presents its reality in different ways to keep reminding us about the fundamental issues facing human beings in the world. Here, firstly, it tells us that human beings have senses and perception by which to obtain knowledge, which they then turn into their understanding and can then deal with the issues of nourishment and development. Because knowledge and Rahim has appeared, and Rahim is Allah's attribute which deals with nourishment and development. And this includes both physical side as well as human cognitive side. It has used two divine attributes of Alim and Rahim for this. Alim is about the importance of knowledge in the human world. Without knowledge, we cannot use our traits of choice and intent. Because if we are ignorant, we cannot use our choice effectively. Rahim refers to the issue of nourishment and development in every aspect of human life, i.e., both the physical side and the psychological aspects. Secondly, its guidance contains the codes of laws which are immutable and are established and help to provide certainty to human existence, so that the system which becomes established with these values is assured of success and prosperity, and this is called Al-Haq. Remember, we said that Al-Haq means that our efforts should lead to constructive results. It is incorrect to give the meaning of full details to the word Fussilat and then to look for complete details of the Quranic values and laws. So we should be very careful in using this kind of phrases or broad terms that Quran contains everything. No, Quran contains the outline of the system of Deen, and then we have to figure out the details according to the era in which we live. The Quran does not provide details of subclasses which need to be figured out according to the requirements of the era in which we live. So there is a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of Jamaat Momineen and its members, and that is why it is important to go through the details of the Quranic verses so that we can figure out that what could be the subclasses as and when the system of Deen is established. The verses of the Quran help differentiate between things to facilitate human choice and decision making. Thirdly, what is given in the Quran differentiates and separates the matters confronting mankind. The term which appears here is Fussilat, which points to the separating distance between two things so that these become differentiated and distinct from each other. Very clear verses in which there is no confusion and ambiguity. Wherever we find anything which we haven't understood, then we have to wait and do some more study in order to come to some conclusion what is stated in each and every verse. The Quran provides principles, laws, and outline, barring a few which have been explained in some detail. And we can figure it out. For example, in terms of wudu, before the congregation of Salat, Quran has gone into detail. Similarly, for example, the punishment for adultery is detailed in the Quran. But a lot of the permanent values which are given over there are to be figured out according to the time in which we live. For example, the Quran says that they ask you regarding what to make available or spend on others, and Quran says beyond your needs. And now this has to be worked out according to the era in which we live. And leaves the bylaws and sub-clauses for the system of Deen to formulate according to the demands of the era, to meet the changing environment of the human world. And that is important because as we go through these verses, we should put in a lot of intellectual effort and into those verses and see what could possibly be the sub-clauses under this permanent values. For example, Quran says that warn others. Now, this is a broad value that warning is a must before we, if we want to hold people accountable. So we have to figure out the sub-clauses according to the era in which we live, that how are we going to warn others. The next part of the verse is Min ladun hakimin khabir. Two attributes of Allah which sum up that what is in the Quran is based on wisdom and on the knowledge of everything, i.e. conditions of the universe and demands of human life. The whole point is to provide us with assurance and certainty that nothing in our life and the universe is random and based on chance. And Hakim also means that the rationale for every clause, sub-clause, permanent value, attribute has to be explained to people. And from here, we can figure out that how much education and training is required right at the fundamental level of our youth and our children. Some general points regarding man-made laws, Kitabul-Uhkimat. Man-made laws are formulated under relative values and keep changing in line with the change in values. For example, the same people formulate one set of laws in their own countries, but formulate different laws when they colonize others. And we see these examples right before our eyes. Similarly, we witness that even those laws made by human beings themselves are influenced by external entities, for example, by the IMF, World Bank, and these are used to exploit others. The question is, why do they do this? And this is an important point, that man-made laws suffer from inherent limitations because human emotions and their own biases and vested interests get involved. Second point is, these laws are influenced by external circumstances and cannot meet the needs of all times. In fact, we can witness for ourselves that in this world where there is so-called freedom of speech in certain countries, with the passage of time, this is being curtailed using one pretext or another. Sometimes pretexts are created, for example, through false flag events deliberately. And a lot is going on in the world of 2023 across the world. And we can witness that these laws which human beings created themselves, because these now have lost some efficacy for the people at the top, those in power, so under one pretext or another, they keep modifying them. The party in power with the majority formulates these laws to suit their party's interests. For example, corporate tax rate is varied to benefit the rich and elite. Short-term measures are introduced to benefit in the electoral process. Powerful nations even manipulate the laws of the weaker nations by installing rulers of their own choice and then suppress the masses by formulating such laws which exploit them and consign them to abject poverty. We have seen the state of the UNO, especially the functioning of the Security Council. The UNO apparently came into existence to prevent wars, and we can see that there have been wars and conflicts across the world. Nothing is done to deal with the causes of these conflicts, as these are initiated and promoted by human hands. So I put down these points because the Quran has said that Kitabun Uhkimat, that what is noted in the Quran is absolutely concrete and established. And if you follow it, you will never go wrong. And it is worth it to compare it with the psyche which works behind man-made laws. Next verse, 11:2, Wahi from Allah invites to obey his laws. Man is informed about the potential consequences of his choices. Allah ta'budu illallah innani lakum minhu nazirun wa bashirun. The fundamental point of the teaching of this code of life is to solely obey the laws of Allah, the one and only. Do not adopt the rule of anyone other than him. In this regard, even the position of this messenger is also such that he does not make you obey him. He only seeks obedience to the laws of Allah, and he informs you of how pleasant will be the outcomes of living life according to these laws and how destructive will be the outcome of contravening them. Acquiring understanding of the laws of Allah with a view to act as a warner. Here the Quran has reiterated the permanent value of only subjecting ourselves to the commands of Allah, as this is what will make us free from fear and huzn. And we have gone through the two terms, khawf and huzn. Fear is the external fear, and huzn is the internal dissonance, psychological dissonance, which becomes created because of the outer environment. When Allah uses the term ta'budu illallah, i.e. do not follow any other constitution of life other than that of Allah, then we need to pause, reflect, and figure out in our minds what does this mean in practical terms in the human world. The Quran demands a very high level of thinking and reflection and on our part, so that we look into the problems created by man-made systems and then try to apply Quranic value system to that. And that is why before the system of Deen comes into in any shape, we have to have people who understand through and through the finer aspects of the system of Deen. This aspect has to signify something extremely serious for us, because the messengers of Allah were sent as Nazirun wa Bashirun, i.e. to serve a warning in case we refuse to follow the Wahi of Allah in terms of its consequences, and to provide glad tidings of the pleasant outcomes of our efforts if we decide to follow Allah's Wahi. Because everything has consequences. Whatever we do in this world, it has consequences. And if we are the students of the Quran, then we have to learn the Quran first and then pass it on to others and warn them, as well as give them good news that in case they come to the Quran, then there will be benefits for everyone. Prior to conveying this warning, it is imperative to understand the message about which we are warning others. The Quran puts before us the stark reality of our existence and repeatedly states to us that by virtue of possessing choice and intent, human creation should be taken seriously and merits our deepest reflection. Then it tells those who have come to grips with this haqq to share it as widely as possible, so that it helps to both develop their own self and can help in the establishment of the system of Deen. So the point over here is that if we do not have a developed self, then many of the points given in the Quran we cannot understand, and also we cannot understand the problems which human beings create in the world. And we cannot understand the religious rituals which are being practiced by others and their significance in relation to the system of Deen. Without experiencing the existence of this developed self within us, we will find hard to explain to others what exactly is acquired by accepting Iman and then doing Saleh deeds. This is an important point on which we have put a lot of emphasis previously as well, but I thought that to reiterate it is important, because we go over it again and again, and we keep reminding ourselves that we have to have a highly developed self in order to pass on the message to others. Because we have to explain that what kind of a change the Quran, by having Iman and Saleh deeds, what kind of a change comes within our psyche. Meaning of the root abd. Here is the root, a fragrant plant which is favorite of camels. By eating it, camels put on weight and provide more milk. So by following the Quran, we can also, inverted commas, can benefit. Camels become thirsty and demand water. 3 points to note here. Attraction and inclination is there. Initially thirst and hardship, then growth and abundance of milk. Hence, in its basic meanings, there is an aspect of initial hardship and a subsequent aspect of a benefit. It includes both the aspects of softness and hardship, i.e. such an ease through which resilience develops. And this is according to Ibn Faris. Ibadat means to enact some deed with the concurrence of the heart. Very important. If it doesn't have concurrence of the heart, then it is not Ibadat, which produces beneficial results later, but initially requires hard work and persistent effort. And some applications from Lughatul Quran. The creation of man and jinn is to follow the guidance of Allah. Used opposite of Taghut, meaning to obey Allah's laws and prevent fasad. Taghut is when people transgress Allah's laws, they rebel against Allah's laws and create fasad in the world. Not to obey Shaitan. The context needs to be kept in view as it is also used for worship. Because wherever there is a mention of idols, then abad will come in the meanings of worship. So we have to remain this is something which we should keep in mind. At the start of the Quran, we make commitment. For example, we say at the beginning in Surah Fatiha, Iyyaka na'budu, and next is Iyyaka nasta'in. We obey you. And this is a very crisp and powerful statement. And see how many times people say it every day and still they do not come to the Quran. The meaning of abd is also slave and being ruled. And it's not in a negative sense, because Allah gives a lot of respect and dignity to human beings. And that is why the Quran says, Laqad karamna bani Adama. But some of these terms are in relation to the way human beings run their own affairs. Hence, ibadat means to adopt the rule and obedience to someone. And this is in our own interest to follow these laws. Further reflections on ibadat. The foundation of Deen is on ibadat. The meaning of abd is a slave or a subject. Hence, ibadat means to adopt the rule and obedience of someone. The basis of Deen is on this concrete principle that obedience and rule cannot be of anyone's except the laws of Allah. This is called ibadat of Allah, i.e. in every matter to enact obedience to the laws and commands of Allah. When Deen converts into religion, then ibadat turns into worship. Because human beings look for cop-outs, they look for easy path, and they don't want to follow Allah's laws because those are, of course, initially difficult to follow, and then the results appear later on. And those go against human hedonistic desires. And worship is very easy because people do it in their own private time, whatever they like. And that is where they create an emotive concept of God of their own choice. The concept of worship is non-Quranic. Under Deen, Allah is not worshipped. Instead, He is obeyed. That is, His laws are obeyed. This is the fundamental difference between Deen and religion. Worship is merely an internal feeling or assumed satisfaction, a deception of the self. And worship does not produce any concrete results in the outer world. These are just a sort of self-deception, which cannot be seen or assessed. This is why every worshipper becomes gratified in his own heart that he is fulfilling his own duty. And that is where the sense of guilt also comes in, that if I did not follow this, then I might have annoyed God of their own concept of God. Under obedience and rule, this can be constantly witnessed whether ibadat of Allah is taking place or not. Under obedience, that is ibadat in Deen, such deception cannot be attained, nor can such false satisfaction be acquired. Deen deals with concrete results, and that is what al-haq means. If the system of Deen is established, it will manifest its own efficacy, its own importance to everyone. Next verse 11:3, in the obedience of Wahi lies the secret of Rububiyyat as a system. I will go through the meanings. In this connection, he also communicates this message of Allah to you, that seek the means of protection from the law of Rububiyyat of Allah. And I have highlighted over here, Rabbakum, wa nistaghfiru Rabbakum, that protection will come through this system of Rububiyyat. Seek the means of protection from the law of Rububiyyat of Allah and moving away from all other directions. Approach only towards His law. He will bestow upon you extremely pleasant and acceptable means of sustenance for a defined term, the estimation of which occurs according to your own deeds and conduct. I have highlighted another part in red. Yumatti'ukum mata'an hasanan ila ajalin musamma. Ajalin musamma means this specific defined limit will be according to what you do, according to your own deeds. And the extent to which you keep enhancing your ability to seek means of sustenance. To the same extent, He will keep bestowing economic prosperities. But if you transgress this principle, then I fear that a severe devastation will descend upon you. Further reflections on this verse. Here the Quran has confirmed the process and procedure by noting an important principle regarding the system of Rububiyyat. Firstly, implicit in this statement is that we need to have a desire for the system and we need to be fully committed to it. We cannot follow a certain path unless we desire to follow that, unless we feel the need for that. So Quran is very clear on that and continuously says that create a desire, create a need for the system of being. Secondly, having seen all other man-devised systems and their issues, we wish to come under the total protection of Allah's laws. For this, we need to look at all those verses where terms like astaghfiru have appeared. Thirdly, since we wish for adequate means of sustenance in this life so that we can live life in peace and tranquility, the Quran has recognized this desire of ours and told us that all this will be achieved and it is placed within human reach. All those verses where Quran says that Allah will provide you help in case you follow this path are meant to encourage us to come to the Quran. Fourthly, it has added hasanan to mataan, meaning that this means of sustenance will provide respect, dignity, and balance to our collective life. Just reflect on one aspect of the elimination of yatim and miskeen in society. This will add tremendous beauty to collective existence under Deen. Just imagine that wherever we go on the planet, there is prosperity and shared pleasures of being human. And this is important because balance can only come through equitable distribution of means of sustenance in the world. And if there is no Jamaat and Momineen, then this is never going to happen because they are the ones who understand the implications of not having balance in the world. The system of Deen is not otherworldly, it is within human reach. Fifthly, the Quran has removed the uncertainty of future events by stating Matan Hasanan ila ajalin musamma, that as long as this system follows the laws of Allah, its future prosperity and success is assured. The issue before us is to work out its details tangibly, i.e., the system of Deen in all its details. When the Quran confirms this commitment by declaring that وَيُؤْتِي كُلَّ ذِي فَضْلٍ فَضْلَهُ, this fadl of Allah will be earned by the system in direct proportion to their efforts, based on this understanding and motivation that the needs of everyone must be adequately met initially, and then to help beyond the geographical limits of the system of Deen. This world is created in a way that whatever human beings do, they can find the results of their own efforts. Even over here, for example, we are making an effort to understand the Quran and see how week by week after week, our understanding is becoming better and better, and it's expanding. And we know that it is expanding because some of the things which did not make sense previously are now becoming clearer to us. Then Allah has also served a warning that do not take these things for granted, as these are linked to our psyche and our efforts on the path of Allah. Here we need to come to terms with this fact that all this is not to be carried out mechanically. Because when anything is done under the compulsion of outside factors, human beings give up the moment this external compulsion disappears. The change in human psyche can be measured and is signposted by the Quran. Some examples. Continuing from the last point, let us expand its understanding through examples from our daily existence. For example, if children study under the external compulsion of parents, then they will not put in their best as compared to when they see their own interest and success in their studies. They are likely to stay motivated and will keep working hard until the aim is achieved. They will also witness the benefits of this approach. For example, through these lectures, if we see them, look at them mechanically, then we will not benefit as much if we look at it psychologically, that what is in it for me. And always keeping in mind that my stay on this planet is finite. And when I'm gone, as far as this world is concerned, it will continue, but I will have nothing to do with this world. So the issue is to bring change within our own psyche. And that is what I'm trying to illustrate over here. We have witnessed that those who have acquired power in the world work day and night to keep a hold on this power and its associated benefits. What motivates them to do this? The Quran puts it in a few words, Mata'ul Hayat Dunya, because they see immediate benefits in that. And that is the way man is created. At a basic level, man is in a having mode. And to become or to reach a being mode, they have to make an effort and come out of that having mode. And the Quran is taking us beyond that even being mode. There is no hasanan added here, as its benefits are physical only, hence these are temporary and end with the demise of the system. This decline and demise is inbuilt within the man-made systems. Deen simply cannot decline when followed as outlined. All man-made systems are bound to decline, and Quran has clearly stated it, and we see the evidence of it. That is why the phrase is used, history repeats itself. In the system of Deen, the Quran says that there is no way, if you are following this balanced system, in the system in which both human self and body is taken care of, and you follow these permanent values, this system will never ever have declined till the time we decide to give up. Most people study the Quran without thinking about the system of Deen and without directing their attention to the gross injustices in the man-device system. Hence, they can never obtain those benefits which are associated with the self's development. This is why they put so much emphasis on religious practices which provide satisfaction through mechanical movements, but patently lead to wasted human effort when we view this under the lens of the Quranic criteria. Next verse, the law of requital of Allah ensures human deeds bear results. All deeds have scales. See how much reassurance Quran is giving us that whatever efforts you make in this world after acquiring Iman, these are bound to produce good results, number one. And these results will be visible to you by the change which is coming within you and by coming together. Remember, by transgressing his law, you cannot find protection anywhere. The direction of every turn of your life is towards him, and the outcome of your every deed is established according to this law. And this is not meant to create any fear. When Quran says, Illallah marji'ukum, this is the reality, this is the fact. And it is better for us to understand this as students of the Quran. He has established scales for deeds and their outcomes, and he possesses complete control over them. How reassuring it is that once we come to this concept of Allah, which is given in the Quran, how much assurance and security is being provided by these verses. Hence, no deed of man can escape the grip of the law of requital of Allah. Further reflections on this verse. Allah asks us to keep reminding ourselves that every step of ours in this life is heading towards our physical end. This means three things. Firstly, we have a finite time on this planet, and hence our life needs to be targeted towards that lofty aim of Deen, which the Quran has outlined in detail. Secondly, to study every aspect of the law of requital and the law of respite, to keep an eye on our conduct and ensure it remains within the permanent values, and to manifest divine attributes. Allah is mentioned here in the verse, which means all his attributes are applicable over here in our life. Thirdly, remind others as indicated, marji'ukum, you, so that collectively people understand that they are not here forever, and it is an evidence-based fact. And this is a very difficult point. And I have tried it as well, and we have to keep trying it and keep reminding others that that is a fact of life. Then the Quran tells us that nothing in the human world is random or by chance. All things and events have scales. Look for them, you will find them, and you will get strengthened Iman, just like scientists gain conviction in physical phenomena through empirical evidence. So working or the functioning of the law of requital in the human world is based on evidence. And that part which affects our psyche is a bit difficult initially, but as we gain experience, we can relate to it, that how the events around us and in our own life are affecting our own psyche. This also means that whatever we do in our life, we need to create procedures and processes for organized living. These should cover both aspects of human life, i.e. physical as well as of the self. Discovering and teaching these scales is part and parcel of the system of Deen. So from here we can see when Quran says, Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir, how much work is yet to be done under the system of Deen. So we had to spend a lot of time day and night to figure out these scales. Next verse 11:5, our thoughts and deeds influence our psyche, we cannot hide anywhere. And I'll go to the meanings. Therefore, this effort of theirs that they will be able to live a life of dual personality, i.e., keep one thing hidden in their hearts while manifesting something different externally. And in this way, think that they have become hidden from the sight of our law or try to hide their self completely, then in this effort of theirs, they can never succeed. Quran has noted these things at a number of places that Allah knows what is in your hearts and what you display in the outer world, which is also related to hypocrisy. And when Quran says that, it does not mean that we should ignore it and move forward. There is a lot in it to study human beings and to study human psyche. That why do human beings have psychological dissonances? This is because they are not fully conscious of their own thought process, and as a result, what they are doing and the choices they are making, they are not well-informed choices. Hence, whatever they conceal and whatever they manifest, all is evident to the law of requital. He is even aware of passing thoughts in the heart. So when Quran says that Innahu alimun bizati sudur, that Allah is aware of what is going on through your hearts and minds, there is a big task on our part as students of the Quran to understand the human psyche. And we have gone through these aspects previously as well, and more will come in the future. Some reflections on this verse. Here is a pertinent point related to the human psyche, which the Quran relates by saying that you hide things, thinking that these cannot be discovered, then you are mistaken. Nothing remains hidden in the human world because firstly, Allah knows about it, or in other words, whatever we do is contributing to our self-development in one way or another. So how can it remain hidden? And we can see in today's world that whatever has gone in the past, for example, collectively, the powerful nations, what they did to the weaker nations, now it is coming out very clearly. And these things point to this fact that ultimately, when people do wrong or good, it all comes out if we give it some time, because it takes time for the results to manifest themselves in the future. Secondly, since we are aware that we have acted in a particular way, it keeps bothering us initially at the conscious level, and then it goes into the subconscious and influences our decision-making and conduct in the outer world. Dual personality is bad for the human psyche. And we can figure it out ourselves as well, particularly those who changed the course of their life by coming to the Quran. They can look at their own psyche, which they held before coming to the Quran, and they will see that there will be a lot of dissonances in that part of their psyche. Continuing, thirdly, such thinking and behavior affects our ability to obtain the maximum from the Quranic guidance. Because Quran requires a unity of thought, and if in our subconscious we are holding back something, we are not fully committed to it, then what will happen is that we will not get the best out of it. And if we do not get best out of it, then when we come together, we will have reservations and doubts. And if our mind has certain reservations and doubts about some choices we make in life, then we will not be putting in our best, despite coming to it. I.e., if it is negative, then we fail to develop our latent potentials, whereas if we manage to bring it under control and become conscious of it, then we can get onto the exponential path of eminence. And that is the reason I also insist that we should come to these meetings, which is only one meeting on every Sunday. And over here, we should discuss these things. And if we are facing certain difficulties of holding something within our subconscious, then we can figure it out and discuss it here. And we can do it even on one-to-one basis as well. Because unless we get rid of these reservations and doubts and suspicions and zan, we cannot give our best we cannot bring out the best within us in the light of the Quran. Then we are reminded that Allah knows the secret of our hearts. It is not to instill fear in our hearts, but to remind us that this is how the system is created to function. So if Allah knows the secrets of our heart, and we also know that He knows our heart, it is just a cautionary note on us initially. But gradually we become used to this, that whatever we are thinking, we are fully conscious of it, that what we are thinking, and whatever choices we are making in our life, a stage comes that it becomes a second nature with us as Momineen. And we can employ this aspect in our favor by following the guidance with Iman and then seeing how Allah's law of requital produces positive results through our saleh deeds. Again, a reminder regarding saleh deeds, as the word suggests saleh, it is to bring out our own best. For example, if we are helping others, of course we are helping somebody else, another human being, and trying to bring them out of the difficulties in which they are. But over and above, we should also keep it in mind, it is to follow the divine attributes of Rahim and Rahman and others through which we learn that there is a need for the system of being. And that compassion which we develop, that understanding which we develop helps us to move on this path significantly forward. Next verse, our life, 11:6. Our life here is the first stage which will hand us over to the next stage of our life. Now, this is a very powerful verse. Of course, all verses of the Quran are powerful, but in the context in which I have said this, it will become clearer later. وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا وَيَعْلَمُ مُسْتَقَرَّهَا وَمُسْتَوْدَعَهَا كُلٌّ فِي كِتَابٍ مُبِينٍ. It has been stated above that by living life according to the law of Allah, abundances of rizq are obtained, but these abundances should not remain confined with some particular class. Rizq is the means by which to sustain life, hence it should reach every living entity according to need. The truth is that there is no such living thing on planet Earth for whose rizq Allah has not taken on responsibility. This is because He knows how much and what kinds of means of nourishment are required for each living thing to remain at one stage, and then according to the law of evolution to reach the next stage. This is all clearly noted in the book of the law of Mashiach of Allah. There is nothing hidden. If we haven't found it, then we have failed to discover it. So we should become alim with every passing day. Hence, only that system can be the one to fulfill the aim of Allah in which no living entity remains deprived of rizq. The system which will fulfill these responsibilities of Allah will be the one which is declared to be the system of Allah. Expanding the issues noted here. Here comes the verse which requires us to pause and to reflect on it as broadly as possible. The Quran has drawn our attention to the outer world which is functioning under the direct control of natural laws of Allah. No living thing in this sphere of life carries its risk on its back. It's only human beings who accumulate. It searches for its sustenance every day, finds enough, and then returns. See the beauty of Allah's system, that it searches for its sustenance every day. So there is an element of deed in it. Finds enough, that whatever they need, they get it, and then returns happily without any fear that what will happen if they don't find it tomorrow, because they know there is plenty there. For example, birds to their nests. As long as this word of Allah is beyond human interference, that is, it is not in the hands of non-Quranic people, it keeps functioning in a balanced way. There is no facade in this system of Allah. Next is, if we read this verse without pause and reflection, that is passing through it quickly, it will not make much sense. We can easily miss the serious issue of the means of sustenance and its distribution in the human world. Because what Quran has said is that every living being, the risk of every living being is present on the planet, and you should be able to detect it in case you make an effort. Let us scrutinize it carefully. Firstly, it states that the responsibility of risk on planet Earth lies with Allah. We witness that it is only in the human world that people go hungry and their basic needs are not met. Otherwise, in the outer world, beyond human hands, there are no issues. Then we look at it in the light of the law of Rububiyyat of Allah, and we find the answer clearly laid out in front of our eyes, i.e., establish the system of Deen and ensure that no one is carrying anything surplus around with them. And this is where sometimes we find that this is an impossible task. The Quran is not asking us to do it tomorrow. That is, after this lecture, we should have the distribution of means of sustenance in our hand. It doesn't work like that. It has to go forward on an evolutionary pace. For example, we have come together, we are discussing it, and once we understand the salient points, then we will see that the things will start taking shape for the next stage. Implicit in this is also the fact that all the means of sustenance are kept within planet Earth for all times prior to the arrival of life. And this is amazing. And that means this is all is carefully planned. The issue is the distribution of these means of sustenance. We should keep that in mind, and let's go to the next slide. The next part of the verse requires further deep reflection, where it is stated that based on evidence, وَيَعْلَمُ مُسْتَقَرَّهَا وَمُسْتَوْدَهَا, acquire the knowledge of the fact that this life of yours is not the final abode. And that is the problem with the human psyche, that when human beings think that the life will end with death, they think this is it, I should accumulate as much as possible, never mind what happens to others. It is for a defined period of time which is controlled by the physical law. And the Quran over here says, mustaqarraha, that don't think that this is your final stage here. You die and that is the end of it. No, mustaqarram wa matan ilahin. And this is stated in Surah Baqarah at the beginning, where the story of Adam is. It is for a defined period of time which is controlled by the physical law. And this is why death is inbuilt within your physical body. And see how beautifully Quran has, in these few terms, explained the whole story of human existence. That this planet is going to hand you over to the next phase of your life. This stage of your life will at the end hand you over to the next stage of life called the hereafter. Mustawdaha. Think through it repeatedly. Why do we die? Is that it? All that work which we do, will it go to waste? And we know under Al-Haq, nothing goes to waste. The whole creation is meant to produce positive results, constructive results. How can we enhance our value as a human being to benefit during the earthly life? And that is the key point. How can we enhance our value as a human being to benefit during the earthly stage and then benefit in the hereafter? And over here now, there is a continuity established between this life and the next one. Do we wish to take the fruits of our efforts to the life in the hereafter? And that is important. Do we wish? Have we created a need within us? And how intense is that wish? How intense is that need within us? Are we looking beyond our own self? Just a having mode or going into the being mode as defined by Allah? In reference to the state of the self, which has the potential and ability to elevate itself in eminence through Iman and Salih deeds. And Quran says, وَلِكُلِّ دَرَجَاتٍ مِمَّا عَمَلُوا. Your development of the state of yourself is decided according to the deeds you do. Our deeds decide our state of development. In another place, Quran says, لَتَرْكُبُنَّ طَبَقًا عَنْ طَبَقٍ. You shall surely go from stage to stage. And we see that as well. We have created our own system in schools and universities and colleges that we go from one stage to another. Why should Allah's system be different? The way the human self elevates itself to a higher stage, in the same way it can go down as well. Nothing remains static in the universe, and recognizing it to be dynamic is part of our effort to develop ourselves. So if we are not following the path of the Quran, then essentially we are not developing ourselves. And this self which we have will have no life in the hereafter. And that is the point which should motivate us to create a need for the system of being. By concluding the verse with kullun fi kitabin mubin, it is not something which is kept secret, not at all. It is there as part of wahi, and whoever is looking for guidance will be able to come to grips with it. A great sign of encouragement over here, that there is so much to learn from rest of our life that we should be very pleased with it. We should look forward to that. It means if we let the Quran help us to develop our intellect, then things will keep becoming clearer. This aspect needs some elucidation, as at times the question arises in our minds that what about those to whom the message has not been given, or who have never come across the Quran in their whole life? Allah has made it clear at a number of places to the messenger and to us that he knows the secret of the hearts. His only, that is the duty of the messenger, and ours is to pass on the message. And Quran says, Ya Ejaz Rasool balligha ma unzila alayka min rabbika. And see Rab over here, that about the need of the system of Rububiyyat, we should pass it on to others and tell them that this Quran is the one which will solve your problems and make your world free from khawf and huzn. And if they turn away, فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ فَإِنَّمَا عَلَىٰ رَسُولِنَا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ, that if they turn away, if you turn away, then our messenger is there to pass on the message clearly. And this is an important point for us, that we should worry about it if people reject the message. Initially, yes, we do get discouraged, but gradually with practice, as we proceed further in the understanding of the Quran, we make it part of our psyche, and we understand that human beings only change when they wish to change. In relation to Rububiyyat also, the Quran has laid down all the requisite outlines of the value system based on which we can figure out the system of Deen. In this process of figuring out the details of Deen as a system, we educate and train ourselves. And thus the Quran helps us to expand our vision and outlook, which starts to meet the criteria laid down for a developed self. So Quran is not something which should scare us or create a fear within us. In fact, this alleviates all those fears, and our inner dissonances can be removed, and it gives us great hope and expectation for our life, which is yet to come. Next verse, the system of the universe is the outcome of an extremely carefully thought out plan by Allah. وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا وَلَئِنْ قُلْتَ إِنَّكُمْ مَبْعُوثُونَ مِنْ بَعْدِ الْمَوْتِ لَيَقُولَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا سِحْرٌ مُبِينٌ. A number of points covered over here. I hope I can do justice with that. His system is this, that he has passed the highs and lows of the universe through various states and stages by formulating various elements, until such a time that these became enabled so that living things could obtain nourishment in them. He based life on water and kept the central control over this with himself. Next is, then he established the tussle between death and life amongst living things so that it could be determined who amongst you acquires eternal life after living a balanced way of life. Very important. The tussle which is going on between Haq and Batil is part of the way we have been created. So we should stop complaining about it. The one who lives a balanced life is the one who gives the maximum for the nourishment of others. As a result of that, system becomes established in which rizq keeps on reaching every living entity. Those people who do not acknowledge these fundamental truths, if it is said to them that the system of life also continues on beyond that, they will state that this is a blatant lie. Life is only the life of this world. So we know what kind of a people and their psyche who reject the message of the Quran once we pass it on to them. Expanding the verse by parts. A number of points noted in this verse require our attention. Firstly, Allah has drawn our attention to the outer world and informed us that since you have questions about the outer physical world, let us tell you something about it. All this visible universe and beyond was not created in one all of a sudden event. Rather, it went through a number of carefully thought out and planned stages. The universe was to be ready for the arrival of a creation like man, like you and me, who possesses choice and intent, and is provided with a questioning and inquisitive intellect supported by emotive makeup. And this is how we should look at our own life, our own psychological makeup. Man needed to live in a world where he could apply all his energies to bring out his latent potentials, and as a consequence become a companion of Allah by using the guidance of Wahi. Secondly, the verse states that Allah knew man will have questions about the creation of life on the planet, and particularly his own creation. Here he has informed us about the fundamental fact that all life owes its existence to water, from which life on the planet became initiated. And this is the physical part of our life. Our cognitive life is totally different, and we will come to that at some later stage. It also means that Allah has full control, his laws, on the fountainhead of life in every aspect. Thirdly, why is man created? What exactly is the purpose of his life? Then the verse sums it up concisely and forthrightly by stating, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Such conditions will become created among mankind, which will help to bring out the balanced side of your potentials. This point is further expanded in the next slide. Become fully aware of your choices and deeds and get the best out of this life. The same is stated elsewhere. For example, in another verse, Quran says, Alladhi khalaqal mauta wal hayata liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala. So Quran clearly says that this death is not by chance. Death has been created with a purpose. And it is long enough to do well and follow the Quran, have iman and do solid deeds and be qualified for the life of the hereafter. And that life of the hereafter is not some mystery. You will know that where you are heading at the time of your death. And this is something with which we have to convince ourselves and as students of the Quran. And this is inbuilt within iman and solid deeds. We have gone over these points previously as well. It is just to reiterate and reassure our own self. He created death and life so that you obtain the opportunity to bring out your best through your deeds. Note that the verse is addressed to you, i.e., equally to every human being in the world for all times. Now, the obvious question which comes to our mind is that few seem to be aware of this purpose of human creation, excepting the students of the Quran. What should we do? Who should inform and rationally explain to them? Of course, if we have to pass it on to others, we have to rationally understand ourselves, and we should have a developed self so that we can pass on to others and tell them that this is how a developed self feels like and how it behaves in the outer world. Who should inform and rationally explain to them, everyone in the world, so that they can consider this as a choice. Fourthly, the Quran indicates here that not all will accept this fact of life, as they are not willing to use the rational reasoning side with which all are equipped. Because using the rational reasoning side needs effort. It needs a lot of thinking 24/7. When they look at their physical body, they come to this conclusion that once this body is dead, there is no possibility of its revival, hence there is no life in the hereafter. The Quran tells us that do not look at your body only, look beyond it, i.e. at yourself and its cognitive potential about which you are asking this question. And this is interesting because all what we see on YouTube, for example, recently I watched the interview between Piers Morgan and the Professor Richard Dawkins. And I saw that Professor is not looking for answers within his own self. He's more concerned what others are doing. This self is non-physical and you do not witness its death. Actually, you witness your own physical death. Further reflections. Fifthly, the Quran states that having convinced yourselves of the fact of life in the hereafter, then this fact is shared with others, those who do kufr, for example, deny accountability because they wish to follow their own unbridled desires. They say that this is all based on lies. They have to say it is based on lies because otherwise they will not follow their hedonistic desires and they will take care of other human beings as well. It has to be a selfish living to do kufr. Otherwise, the Quran is all about helping others. There is absolutely no possibility of the continuation of human life beyond physical death. This is the only life we have, and the purpose of this life is to gratify our own desires. So this is the mentality and outlook of kufr, never caring what impact this has on others. And it is an animalistic level of existence. And Quran has referred to it in few verses, i.e. they do not care about the consequences of their deeds as they do not hold themselves accountable. So this is the default position of human beings. And Quran is asking us to grow out of it, come out of it. And that is where the purpose of creation lies, that we have to create a new self within us. So this is that model of creation which Quran is asking us to understand and then apply it on our own selves. Even if some do have doubts, for example, i.e. the possibility of a life in the hereafter, they create their own belief systems called religions, which support their own desires, and this helps them to overcome that subconscious fear regarding their personal accountability. Once this kind of psyche becomes created and accepted, then all desires and deeds become attractive to them. Because human beings can justify whatever they want. And even if some kind of quasi guilt is created, they can easily overcome that and justify it. They then use their potential of self-justification to overcome any antics or feeling of guilt. The Quran says that such human beings then go so far in their journey on the path of kufr, and we covered this, Dr. Wasim covered this surah very well, Alhaakumut Takasur, Hatta Zurtumul Maqabir. in pursuit of multiplying their worldly gains, their psyches simply cannot comprehend the higher purpose of life. Verse 11:8, that's the last verse for today. We are asked to remain firm on our path and witness the functioning of the law of requital. I'll go over the meanings. This is that Jamaat of those who reject, whom the messenger warns about the devastating consequences of their wrong path. But according to the law of requital of Allah, the manifestation of the outcomes of deeds, i.e., the time for the recompense for deeds, arrives after a defined time of respite. During this time of respite, accusations and mockery commence from their side, that where is that destruction about which you were threatening us like this? What is it that has stopped it from reaching us? And this is a sort of arrogance in human beings, that when they don't want to follow a particular path, they start questioning it and they do not accept it. Say to them that listen to this fact with full attention, that the destruction will inevitably come, and when it comes, no power in the world will be able to stop it. Neither will it be able to be diverted by anyone. No one will be able to change its direction to another direction, and you will witness with your own eyes that the thing which you used to mock at, how it has encircled you from all four sides. Further reflections on this verse 11:8. After summarizing that the dependence of life on the planet is based on water and what is the purpose of human creation, the Quran goes a step forward and states here that those who do kufr have respite as per the law of respite. And this is important for us to understand and not to get impatient. And during this time of respite, which the law provides, we should make maximum efforts to understand the Quran and the system of Deen. However, this interval of respite is not indefinite. It depends on human deeds, hence is an instruction for us to keep an eye on its functioning while steadfastly striving on the path of the Quran. There are two aspects of this time of respite with which we need to remind ourselves. Firstly, as individuals, we definitely know our time of respite ends with our physical death. We, being the students of the Quran, should look at the commencement of a new life within us from the day we came towards the Quran and acquired firm iman in it. And why should we get impatient when we haven't understood the Quran completely and we haven't really acquired that kind of a psyche which is fit for the system of Deen? And these are the things which we have to carry out their evaluation within our own self. And that dampens down that kind of feelings emerging, emotive feelings emerging within us that we haven't done enough. We should do our task first properly and then say that we haven't done enough. Then we need to look at our conduct, that what exactly do we do after this iman under the guidance of Allah's wahi. Secondly, while living our life guided by wahi, we look at the collective life of humanity across the globe. Study of the man-made systems in the world in which we live helps us to become aware of the functioning of the law of requital and the law of respite. Though the events of inbuilt decline within the man-made systems apparently proceed very slowly, at times are not even visible, but they are always present. And we can see that there is a decline taking place gradually. We can evaluate the progress with a higher understanding of the Quran. Here the Quran helps us by inviting us to look at the history of the rise and fall of nations. Now, concluding this verse and concluding this presentation as well, by concluding the verse with the statement, وَحَاكَ بِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. The Quran makes us aware about the human psyche and its issue of not taking life seriously. Because Quran oversays that whatever they were mocking, because they were not taking seriously their own existence and life, and they thought they are not accountable. Ultimately, their deeds catch up with them. And once they catch up with them, then nothing can escape the punishment which is meted out through the law of requital. When human beings, especially those in power, think that the purpose of life is to pursue their own desires, then they tend to become non-serious about the consequences of their actions in the world. And they think might is right and the end justifies the means, become their values. And we can see that all across the world. This diverts their psyche towards ridiculing those who warn them about the consequences of their actions in the outer world. This acquisition of power by human beings at the top is very deceptive because it does not meet the criterion laid down by the permanent values. That is why Quran says If you are Aziz, then you should also be Hakim. We can witness this in the world of 2023, where struggles are ongoing between the masses and their leaders in almost every country. And those at the top view the public contemptuously, as though they were some kind of non-human entities. I watched an interview between with Professor Jordan Peterson and Piers Morgan. It's worth watching, in which he says that these people at the top appear to be hating humanity. And he is basing it on evidence. Recent wars and conflicts, for example, Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Afghanistan, and even the previous wars, First World War, Second World Wars, war in Korea and in Vietnam, are all initiated by men in power, supported by vested interests who have no concern about economic deprivation in the world, but deep down think that they are beyond any accountability. And that is the point which the Quran is hitting hard, that each one of us is accountable. And since we are accountable, hence whatever we do has consequences. This should strengthen our resolve on the path of Allah. Actually, this is a news of glad tidings for us, that I am responsible for whatever I do. So if I keep doing righteous deeds, then I will get good results in later part of my life, and myself will develop on the right lines. This has led to this attitude of mocking the poor and the victims, who all are human beings worthy of respect and dignity according to the Quran. Here Allah tells us that this will come to an end soon if Jamaat Momineen becomes formed and then follows the Quran. The results can manifest in direct proportion to their collective efforts, and this could even be possible within one lifetime. And with that, thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.